this video is going to be all about common tone diminished seventh chords, or cto7s, or CT diminished seventh chords, whatever you want to call them. So up until this point, anytime that we see a fully diminished chord, we always see it as a 7, right? It's either a 7 of something resolving to a half step above that, or it's just the 7 in the key usually resolving to 1 as a dominant function. So as we keep talking about more and more fancy chords and other chords that we might run into, this is actually a really important one. So normally, whenever we see a 7, it is resolving to something. If we see a common tone diminished seventh, which I'm going to get into how they're built, how we find them, this means that we are actually looking at more of an embellishment more than a function. Okay, so this is like a fancy chord. It's not going to really fit in the key. It's going to look really strange. You're not going to understand why am I seeing a diminished seventh chord in the middle of a progression, instead of seeing something very clean and dry where we just see that it resolves up to 1 or resolves to that secondary dominance only a half step away. All right, so as long as we think about them as embellishments, it actually makes a lot of more sense. So a common tone diminished seventh chord is literally what it sounds like. It is a fully diminished seventh chord that shares one note with its chord of resolution. Now the chord of resolution doesn't necessarily have to be a 1. It could be a 5, it could be anything else, as long as it shares one common tone with that note. So for example, let's say, I'm not going to put a key with it. Let's say we have an A sharp fully diminished seventh chord. A sharp. So A sharp, C sharp, E, and G. This is fully diminished, built on A sharp. I'll put in parentheses A sharp. Okay. Normally, what would this resolve to? A sharp, same as B flat, would resolve to B, normally, if we were thinking about stuff, right? But let's say instead that we actually keep this G as the common tone and we resolve our other notes. So this kind of came into there and there. We're going to talk about resolutions, right? Very soon. And what do we get instead? If we keep this G the same, we actually get a different resolution. And instead, this is actually a G major chord. So this is showing you that this doesn't necessarily have to resolve to B. It still has that B in the bass. This is the strong pull going up to that. But instead, the G stayed the same and we created a whole different resolution. All right. So there's a couple different ones that show up commonly in what they resolve to. And that is a sharp 2 and a sharp 6. These are still both considered CT7s. If you find this, you are going to just label it as CT7, but I'm just showing you some language that commonly shows up. Okay? So for example, our sharp 2 is pretty much going to embellish. So this is where our embellishment, I'm going to show you a whole example using our sharp 2. Say that we're in the key of B flat. B flat, E, B flat, E flat, great. Let's say we have a D here, a B, and let's say we have shared Fs, that's fine. And then we're gonna go G to an E natural, and we're gonna keep that B flat, and we're gonna have this C sharp. And then we're gonna go right back to where we came from, doubled Fs, B flat, and a D. Okay, so let's figure out what's going on here. First of all, this chord's really easy. B flat, D, and F. That is a B flat major chord in first inversion, so that's just a 1/6. Now let's figure out what this chord is. So if you run into this case and you can't really figure it out, we're gonna just figure out what the chord is without putting in a Roman numeral. So we have a C sharp, we have an E, we have a G, we have a B flat. So C sharp, E, G, B flat is a C sharp fully diminished seventh chord. If you're going across and you're analyzing this, in your mind you're like, is this a secondary dominance? This could be resolving to D. Let's see what happens. It actually resolves right back to our B flat. in first inversion. So this can't be a secondary dominance. How else could we explain it? Well, in this specific example, we are building our cto7 on sharp 2. And if you look at it, it's actually embellishing our 1/6, right? So it's going 1/6 to this weird chord and right back to 1/6. So this is called an embellishment. And we're going to label it as cto7. What's our common tone that is keeping us going? It is this B flat that is common, right? So if you think about it, the root of this chord is that common tone 7th, okay? So whenever we see a sharp 2, it's usually embellishing 1 or 1, okay? Next common one is going to be sharp 6. You can probably kind of guess if this was a sharp 2 embellishing a 1, we are going to say a sharp 6 is probably going to be embellishing a, I'm not sure. Let's keep going along here. Let's see. So we have an A, we have an E flat, an F, and we have a C. Let's go down to B natural. We're going to go to F, we're going to go to C, F. Great. That's a D. I know it's a little squished. I just want to make sure that you guys can see it's going to go right back to where it belongs. Great. All right, so we're going to figure out what these chords are. We have an A, E flat, F, C. If we unscramble that, we actually get an F major minor 7th chord in first inversion. So that's a 5-6-5. Now here we have a G sharp, D, F, B. So G sharp, if I do this, B, D, F. G sharp, B, D, F. This is a fully diminished chord on G sharp. So that is our G sharp fully diminished chord. Again, if you're going across and you found this, you'd be like, huh, I wonder if that's a secondary dominance. It could be resolving to an A. Let's see what happens. This does not resolve to an A. This is actually the identical chord. So this is actually still a 5-6-5. Then you should think to yourself, is this a common tone diminished 7th chord? Well, look across and see if there's any common notes. F is shared between all of these. So this is a common tone diminished 7th chord. It's embellishing 5, and technically it is built on a 6. All right? We don't label these in any inversions or anything, just like that augmented 6. There's no inversions that we add it to or anything like that. It's still going to always be a CT diminished 7th chord when you label them. All right. Let's see if there's anything else that I would like to talk about with these. So they're basically used for embellishment between a 1 chord and a 5 chord. Sharp 2 for a 1, sharp 6 for a 5. You might still find other ones, but for the most part, those are the 2 kinds that you're going to see the most. If you see a fully diminished chord resolving to a 1, it's probably going to be this, unless it fits in the key. If you see it if you see a fully diminished chord resolving to a 5 or a 1-6, I would try and push to analyzing that more as a 7 of 5 instead, because if it's like a sharp 2 resolving to a 5, usually you can describe that as a 7 of 5. But if it's a sharp 2 resolving to a 1, you probably want to explain it more as a CT or common tone diminished 7th chord. So what we're going to do as an example, I would like us to try, let's say you are given the key of E major. Let's go up here. And just for practice, E major. Let's say that we want to try and make a cto7 chord. And let's say that I actually gave you that resolution. So it's going to be a G, E, and then a shared B. Okay? So this is obviously an E major chord, right? E, G, B, but in first inversion, 1-6. Let's say that we want to make this a cto7 chord, okay? If it's resolving to a 1, what do we want to do? We want to try and build this on a sharp 2. So what I say is, let's figure out what sharp 2 is, okay? So if we're in E major, what's 2? F sharp. So we're gonna actually do an F double sharp fully diminished chord, okay? I'm gonna put that F double sharp here. How do we spell one of those? Well, let's think about an F sharp fully diminished. That's a little bit easier. F, A, C, E flat. F double sharp, just give everything a sharp and it should all work, right? If you just keep all of your changes the same degree. So these are the notes that we need. What is our common tone? Well, we have a G, that's not in this chord. We have an E, that's in the chord, and then we have a B, that is not in the chord. So let's make sure that that E stays where it is. F double sharp, and then actually this is really easy, it's just surrounding kind of that B that we have to resolve to. A, C sharp's in the key, and then we just need that to raise it. Great. So that is an example of a cto7 built on E major, or built in E major, kind of embellishing a 1/6 chord.